G'day guys. Turns out CBS and Paramount Plus really didn't like my video of their first episode. I can't begin to imagine why.
I am truth, the voice of the covenant.
So, you must be silenced.
The irony of me being the prophet of truth is that I'm actually giving a truthful critique of the first episode. Whereas Truth's name is an uncomfortable irony about the truth he's never allowed to speak about the great journey. But I'm sure Paramount Plus's writers know that. I mean, they're very passionate, smart people who love the lore of Halo.
I started, I watched all the cinematics for Halo 1 through 5, obviously, to get a sense of what had already been established in the video games. But then researching the actual mythology, like starting to read about the timelines of all of this stuff and where it went. There's 17 novels. I obviously didn't read all 17 of them yet.
I wondered who the prophets would send to silence me. An arbiter. Unflattered.
Yeah, fair enough. I was a little bit liberal with my use of the footage. I'll cop that. So I've done a re-edit so you can still enjoy my thoughts on the first episode. Hey CBS, I'll die on this hill. Come and get me. Oh, wow. I knew it was going to be bad, but I didn't expect it to be this bad. Jeez, I'd hate to be a long-term fan that's invested 20 years of their life in this franchise.
Hey, what's going on?
Holy shit, where do I even start with this dumpster fire? Oh, I guess I'll start with what I like. It's not canon, thank fuck. And that's pretty much it. The rest of it is varying levels of shit. Somebody better pick up the phone because I fucking called it. How would you be spending like $10 million per episode on this show for this garbage? This is an uncanny fan fiction that's using Halo as a meat skin. Well, I guess I better give a quick summary of what the episode was about. So that would imply a spoiler alert. So if you don't want Halo ruined. Oh fuck, yeah, spoiler alert. So the show opens on the planet Madrigal, which is an outer colonies planet on the fringes of UNSC controlled space. I know this because I'm a massive Halo fan, but the casual viewer who's never seen Halo before won't have any idea what that fucking means. We get a little bit of exposition about how the UNSC is at war with these rebels, or colonists in this case, and how all of these people have fought UNSC Marines at some stage. Then we get the boogeyman story about the Spartans. This is establishing that the Spartans are scary and the colonists do not like them. This will be important shortly. Then the General Fu Manchu comes in, looking all imposing and such, and asks where his daughter is. Cut to Paramount's ticket to the Chinese market. This character has a name like Quay or something like that, but for the purposes of the video, I'm just going to call her what she is. Panda Bait. So Panda Bait's off with her friends looking for drugs that can also power ships. Don't understand how that works, but moving swiftly along. Fortunately, these annoying characters don't last long before they're blown to kingdom fuck by the Covenant. Panda Bait shoots off a flare, which alerts the colonists that there's baddies coming, so everybody runs to the weapons shed to get their shit. These peace-loving colonists are ready for war when Panda Bait gets back and tells her father that it's not the UNSC that's coming. Insert some Michael Bay roided up elites, and then a scene what can only be described as shooting fish in a barrel. This is the Covenant, the antagonist of our story, or so they should be. And I will say, they were quite brutal in their execution here. Oh, eat a dick! All hope seems lost until the Master Chief drops in. Generic sci-fi action set piece, and some arbitrary heads-up display first-person shooter action to remind the audience that this is a game that no one at Paramount Plus played or watched. Chief and not Blue Team kill all the elites, and everybody lives happily ever after. Panda Bait gets upset when the Spartans leave, even though we just established that all the colonists hate the UNSC and the Spartans, and then we move on to the next set piece. Chief and not Callie or Linda go into a cave that's...
Does that appear to be a natural formation?
Oh, fuck right off. Ooh, look how clever we are. Then Chief touches a Forerunner object. I assume it's a Forerunner object, but given that this is the Silver timeline and it's not based on any hard canon, it could be fucking anything. And he has some crazy flashbacks. One elite survived and he has a pot shot at them before running away and then he escapes, but not before slapping Panda Bait on the way past. Chief and not Blue Team then go their separate ways because the show needs this to happen for the twist that's coming at the end of the episode. We then get introduced to Dr. Catherine Halsey, the creator of the Spartan 2 program. Again, so we assume it was in canon, but it could be different here. And she's getting all tingly at the fact that John got tingly at touching that object. We then get introduced to Admiral Margaret Parangoski. She's meant to be like Margaret Thatcher, and literally makes people disappear into black bags if they get in her way. But in this show, she's a bit, how do you say?
This is bullshit. I don't know why I'm spending money to see someone that looks just like me.
Oh well, got to break into that market too, I guess. Mind you, they had their own crack at Halo early on.
Finish the fight. Finish the fight. Finish the fight.
Also, turns out Halsey's working on some shady shit in the background that Margaret's not too happy about. I'm sure that won't be important later. Cut to High Charity, and at this angle it looks like a massive knob. Paramount, gotta love that symbolism. Enter the Prophet of Mercy, who for some reason is taking orders from a human female who now works for the Covenant. Okay. We then get a verbal jousting match between Panda Bait and Miranda Keys. Aw, she's sad and cute. Good thing they didn't take one of the most badass characters from the games and turn her into an absolute softcock, and who also looks far too fucking young to be having this conversation with a fucking traumatized colonist. Doesn't the show say she's an alien expert? Why is she having this conversation? I guess I'm not supposed to think about it. John gets a phone call from his mum saying, hey mate, what's going on? And he's like, oh, I'm having some bad dreams, man. And she's like, oh, it's okay, sweetie. Just stick your arm in that diagnostic machine and we'll fix you when you get back. Love you. But then she's like to her offside, when he gets back, you bring him straight here and I'm going to plug him in and find out what's going on. Then our main character gets introduced to the actual show's main character, Panda Bait, and there's some poor attempt at humour and character building. Back to Reach, and Captain Keys, not Johnson, for those of you confused by the race swap, is meeting with his daughter Miranda to talk about stuff and things. This is when we actually learn that Miranda is the daughter of Dr. Catherine Halsey, and it turns out she's got a rough relationship with her mother. Captain Keys admits that she can be rough around the edges, but he loves himself some white chocolate. Miranda gets shitty at her dad when it turns out they're going to make Panda Bait disappear into a black bag, and she's like, no, we can't lose our humanity. You're just like Mum. Ree! Fuck, this is exactly what Halo was missing. Family drama. Imagine having a sweeping galaxy full of homicidal aliens that are bent on the extermination of humanity, and your show chooses to focus on this. Fucking brilliant writing decision. Panda Bait's then very condescending to the Master Chief, even though he gave her some food, you ungrateful piece of shit. And then John gets the message that she's Article 72 and he needs to disappear her into a black bag. But something is amiss with Chief's programming. The higher-ups at Reach decide to gas John and Panda Bait so that they fall asleep and then they can take them into custody when they get back. This reaction makes everybody at command nervous, so the solution is to scramble the entire UNSC to meet John at the landing site. Really? The entire fucking army has to come out for this? Then Panda Bait gets confused as to why a Spartan is helping her, even though that he's established that that's pretty much all he's done since he met her. And the big reveal. Wow. 20 years in the making. Or is it realistically just 50 minutes in the making because this is its own timeline? But if it is just 50 minutes in the making, why is this set up like the stunning reveal? Like the slow-mo, the dramatic music, there's John's face. But remember, it's not canon. Who is this show for? Anyway, in so doing this, he humanises himself to Panda Bait, because the game's been given away that they're about to take a hostage because the UNSC brought the whole army out to greet them. Tactically flawless decision. What are you talking about? John has a flashback when he touches the magic bullshit device, which for some reason restarts the Pelican, and then they hightail it out of there. Halsey has a bit of a joygasm at John being such a bad boy. Then, like all good shows, it ends on a cliffhanger, so you're keen for the next episode. Time to nitpick. So in the opening scene, the elites blow her friend's kingdom fuck, and then she runs all the way back to the settlement. I know this is low-hanging fruit, but come on. How am I supposed to believe that the elites were point-blank accurate when they blew her friends away, and then she runs across the open desert behind no cover and doesn't get hit once? I smell plot armor. The special effects were meant to be good, like the hallmark of this show, at least according to the trailer. But you look at this opening fight scene, some of it's really good and some of it's garbage. Like this. Why on earth would you computer generate this when you could just drop a prop on the ground? Fuck, it's not like they didn't have a whole heap of them spare. Also, another nitpick, John wouldn't fucking throw away his primary weapon. He is a soldier. He would put it on his back while he used it as his secondary weapon. And this is highlighted later when not Fred gives him a rifle because he's fucking lost his. Isn't this the best fucking soldier in the galaxy? The CGI is dwarfed by trailers from 10 years ago. I mean, look at Deliver Hope compared to this. And say what you will about Forward Unto Dawn, at least they realised that they needed to keep the elites in darkness so they didn't look ridiculous in broad daylight. Also, why do all the elites look like they've, eaten a brute for breakfast? And yeah, in the lore, they're 10 feet tall, but they're not fucking hulking tanks like this. That's what the brutes and hunters are for. Speaking of, where the fuck are all the other Covenant? It's just the Sangheili here. No Ungoi or Kigyar Jackal. What the fuck is this? Grunts and Jackals would have been more than capable of swarming this location. Makes no sense to employ your elites. I guess I'll forgive the race swapping. I mean, I'm going to let other people talk about that, but, this dude probably would have played a really good Sergeant Johnson. I don't understand why they've done this.
Oh, I know what the ladies like.
The forced family drama is something that we don't need in Halo. I don't care about Keyes' relationship with Halsey and Miranda, because we all know what happens to Keyes, assuming this timeline is the same. On that note, the changes to Miranda are pretty unforgivable. No, I'm not talking about the casting, I'm talking about what they've done to her. Miranda Keyes in the games was a badass. She was the commander of her own frigate. She took the fight to the Covenant when no one else would. She was living in the shadow of her father, but she blazed her own trail. Why would you turn her into a spiny little sook? Is this because the casting director at CBS only knows how to hire women who know how to cry? On the opposite side of the spectrum, we got Halsey, who looks like she's having an orgasm every time she's looking at a computer screen. Doesn't bother me, I'm just saying it's a bit odd. Full disclaimer, I did my best to find her sex scenes without a working knowledge of Californication, and the only way to do it was to give my computer AIDS.
I have failed you.
But getting to the point, who's this show actually for? It's not for hardcore fans because, as they announced, it's decanonised and in its own timeline. So it's not even drawing from the same lore. But casual fans are going to have a really hard time with this because there's not a lot of exposition and, funnily enough, relies on a lot of assumed knowledge from the canon that is not relevant to the show. If you're going to do it this way, you need to establish that humanity is in an insurrection with the UNSC. This is meant to be set in the year 2552, and say what you will about them not using the same timeline. In the year 2552, the shit hits the fan. This is the apex of the Human Covenant War. The insurrection UNSC thing is long since past. Yeah, I know they touch on it, but for a casual fan, that's going to be confusing because then the Covenant turns up and it's meant to be this big surprise. A casual fan would just assume that the colonists had all those weapons because they were waiting for the aliens. Also, this bit's so dumb when Chief lands and then General Fu Manchu's "Oh no, Spartan!" and then he tries to shoot at him, even though Chief's shooting at the aliens. Pick a side, mate. God. More than that, he steps into the elite's line of fire and the elite just fucking stands there. What are either of you two doing? I can tell you for free, if I was being attacked by aliens and the UNSC turned up, regardless of how I felt about them, I'd be happy to see them more firepower. It's really clunky that they try to establish that the UNSC are not liked by the colonists by the boogeyman story that the old man tells at the start. You know, it would have helped, not decanonising the show. That way you could have drawn on stuff from the books and previous works. If only there was a show that touched on the relationship between the UNSC and the insurrectionists and how they were at war.
We fight the good fight. Each and every one of you here before me, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We are still at war. And every cadet who wishes to fight will get that chance.
Mayday, Mayday. Forward unto dawn. Immediate evac 117.
This show is a mess. It doesn't know what it wants to be. The greatest example of this actually is when John takes off his helmet. This is a moment that's 20 years in the making, but in the show it doesn't mean anything because it's decanonised. But then the show sets it up like it's this big stunning reveal with the slow music and the camera angles and the slow mode. This moment's clearly targeted at legacy fans, but we don't have a reason to care about it because it's not canon. And we've only known this John for 50 minutes. This isn't the same guy that we've followed on 20 years of adventures, because it's in a separate timeline. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And a casual fan doesn't know that John never takes his helmet off if they're watching this for the first time, so why'd make a big song and dance about it? I can only begin to imagine the creative boardrooming decisions that went on behind the scenes. This show is a textbook example of creation by committee, but it's orchestrated by a group of people who don't know and care about their target audience. It's evident that Halo's just a knee-jerk reaction from Paramount to get something on their streaming service that can compete with Star Wars and The Witcher. I love all the subtle and intelligent nods to the game. Look, it's a first-person shooter. Look, it's a cave. Ooh, it's the fucking shields making the flare noise. We get it, Paramount. You fucking paid off the games and now we're supposed to believe that you actually cared. I'm going to watch the show out of morbid curiosity now to see how much they fuck it up. But in all honesty, I don't care about it at all. I'm actually just here to laugh at it, unfortunately. And that's something I never thought I'd be saying about one of my favourite franchises. It just really makes me wish that Peter Jackson was successful adapting the story 10 years ago. Peter Jackson fought tooth and nail for a faithful adaptation of The Lord of the Rings. And whatever this is far from a faithful adaptation. And I think that's my biggest issue with the show. There's no passion in it. It's just something a corporation's turned out to cash in on the IP of Halo and the established fanbase. On the surface, it's just humanity fighting against a collection of aliens that want to exterminate them. But the deeper you look, the more complicated it gets. For example, the formation of the Spartan 2 program was actually a reaction to the human insurrection. So they were designed to fight terrorists, not aliens. It's only when the Covenant turns up on Harvest and starts killing humans by the thousands that they realise they need to initiate the Spartan 2 program, which turns out is their only effective weapon against the Covenant. This becomes a subplot later when Dr. Halsey tries to twist history to her advantage to say that that was why the Spartans were originally designed. But the show wants to focus on this subplot right away rather than building them up as the heroes that they actually are. Also, in the extended canon, the Spartan children are very much aware that they've been taken away from their families in order to save humanity. Sure, it's against human insurrectionists at first, but they swiftly realise how important they are in the fight against the Covenant. The UNSC never hides this from the Spartans, and it's going to be a main point in the show by the looks of it. Hell, actively with the Spartan 3 program, they go out and enlist orphans whose families have been killed by the Covenant to give them that edge in combat and hatred so that they can come and bring everything they've got to the fight. It seems like the show's setting itself up to tell the story about how the Spartan program was bad, and maybe this is another reason they decanonised it, because that was really effectively told in the Kilo 5 trilogy. If you've not read the Kilo 5 trilogy, check them out, they're fucking awesome. The Spartan 2 program and the morality behind it is a deep and complicated subject matter, and it will require nuance and good writing to articulate that to a new audience. And from what we've seen in the first episode, I don't think Paramount Plus's writers have the competency to do that. Here's a free tip for you, Paramount. Focus on the human Covenant war. Aliens bad, humans good. A nice simple plot for some simple writers. Leave the high-level discussion about the moralities of war and the Spartan program to professionals who are talented, articulate, and actually care about the franchise they're writing for. But remember, I'm just a brainless lump who should have gate-kept harder and can't believe what Paramount Plus has done to his favourite video game franchise. But hey, at least it's not canon.
Were it so easy.
Hooroo.